Hi guys, I'm here today to do my top 10 couples that I enjoy in YA literature. I do this every single year, and normally the list stays pretty much the same, but some new ones did creep on this list this year, and I wanted to share those with you. I feel like my voice is getting a little bit better, but it's not perfect, so just bear with the scratchy voice and my scratchy vocal cords. I do apologize, but I'm on the mend. It's just a process. Most of these books you have seen me talk about before because they really are my favorites, and some of them are a couple are new. So let's get into the video. The first book I'm going to talk about is Cress, which is by Marissa Meyer, and this is the third book in her Lunar Chronicle series. This is the Lunar Chronicle series. I really love Cress and Thorn. I enjoy them so much. I love that Cress really did go through a lot in this book. I love how she really was dealing with a lot. I love the Rapunzel retelling, and I just loved Cress and her dynamics and their relationship throughout the series. I thought that they had a lot of interesting moments, and I love how Cress really did become a hero in this book, and she wasn't just a damsel in distress, and I thought that Marissa Meyer did an awesome job of creating this relationship. It was definitely super fun for me to read and remains one of my favorites of that series. A close second is Winter and Jason, but other than that, I really, really loved Cress, and I really do want to re-listen to this book in the future. So this is definitely a book that I'm putting on my listening queue as well. I touched about this couple last week, but this was another one. Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins is another one of my really favorite contemporary couples that I really like. I talked about it last week. It was one of the first YA romance couples that I read, but I simply love them. And I love the Boy Next Door trope. I love like redemptive love. I love second chance love. I love characters that are a little bit quirky, which these two definitely are. And I just really found this book to be really, really well crafted. And I just immediately fell for Cricket, and I love seeing Lola develop over the course of the novel. It was definitely a very unique twist on a contemporary that I really enjoyed. I did like Anna and Isla, but definitely Lola remains to be one of my favorite in that series. I normally try to listen to her or this book once a year, so hopefully that might happen. And I did get to meet her about early last year. She was very nice, and I really hope she winds up writing more romantic YA books in the future. Another book that I'm going to chat about is really no shock. I also did talk about this one last week as well, but it is Ron and Hermione from Harry Potter. I really love this couple. It was probably one of the first couples that I really felt emotionally attached to. But I love long game romances. I'm really a fan of those, and I love them in fantasy and like science fiction books because I think that you really do feel emotionally invested to the characters by the end. And that is definitely the true statement for Harry Potter. I was patiently waiting for the end of the series to find out how they got together because to me it was super obvious that they were endgame. From book one, I thought they had some great moments. Throughout the whole series, I thought that they had really great moments. And it was one of those romances that just made sense. I definitely felt like Ron and Hermione was the better crafted romance in Rowling's world. I did like Ginny and Harry, but I thought that she really put a lot of time and effort into that romance, and you could definitely tell it over the course of it. There were some moments in book one that I just really, really like, and in book seven, there was some great payoff for that romantic relationship. And I thought that it really was a nice way to balance the series because it obviously is not a romantic series, but I really did like how that romance was really the heart and soul of that series. And it remains one of my favorite long-term romances that I've ever read. So yeah, that's another romance that I just wanted to chat about in this video. And then the last romance that I talked about last week was Simon and Isabel from the Shadowhunter canon. I have not read Lord of Shadows and I have not read Queen of Air and Darkness, but in that series, I simply adored Simon and Isabel. I really was so happy when he got like a romantic love interest. Like, I really made me happy because he really did deal with a lot with Clary, and it was really important to me that Simon is happy. I always root for the underdog in those relationships, and I always come out super heartbroken. But I was really happy that eventually he did get a love interest that like deserved him and that they really did click. Their relationship was really sweet, and I just love the tail end of that series. I really love the after effects of this one too, especially like seeing like what happened after he lost his memory and the after effects. So I'm really excited to hopefully see them again in future books. But for the moment, they remain one of my favorite couples in all of YA literature. Another book that I'm going to chat about is Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Christ. To be super honest, I really loved all the like main romances in this series, but I love that book so much. It's like a love to hate romance. They have a lot of science fiction stuff like influencing their relationships. There was a lot of heartbreaking moments in that book, but I just love the development from love to hate, like hate to love. I just thought it was so well done. And when literally the world is about to end, you have this romance. And I just thought it was so well done. And I love re-listening to that book because it's so complicated. And I love Caddy and Ezra too, but that book really was one that I was like, oh my goodness, what is going to happen to these characters? Obsidio was a great way to wrap up all their stories, but especially Nick and Hannah. And I just really, really liked that book. I also really just enjoyed seeing how all the characters interacted, but especially those couples, I think was one of the highlights of that series for me. And I really hope one day we go back to that world and have some more stories with those characters, but I'm equally excited to see what Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff have for us coming up next. This is another couple that I talked about last week, but it's Ryan and Beth from Dare You To You by Katie McGarry. I do try to give Katie McGarry a shout out as often as I can because I feel like her books don't get as much like world spread love. Like I know she's a very popular author, but I think that she needs a couple more shout outs because her books definitely deal with harder topics. And every book you read, there is like an emotional gut punch that happens. And I'm always here for that. I love emotionally gut wrenching novels and I love the sweet and fluffy ones like Morgan Matson and Casey West, but these romances I feel are so realistic and it's just a really interesting take on romances and I really look forward to reading them. But this book is definitely the highlight. And I'm going to talk about another one next, but I really love this relationship. I think this was the first book, I think I said it last week, where like you follow both the male and female point of views and I really loved getting into both characters' heads. And that doesn't always happen in like fluffy contemporaries because you're normally always in the girl's head. Very, very few books. I know like Jen Bennett, you get both point of views, which I really like. But I really do love this series so much. I love that it deals with harder issues. I love that you really see the impact of trauma on these characters, especially in the Pushing the Limit series. And I just really, really love this relationship and this couple. I thought the epilogue that we got at the end of last year was so well done, and it just made me root for these characters even more. So if you have not checked out this series, I highly recommend that you do. I recommend you start with Pushing the Limits, but you can really read them in any order. They're all really good, but my personal favorite is Dare You To. Our next book I'm going to chat about was not actually on my list last week, but that was The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. I really love books where girls or any characters really go through a lot of self-discovery because I think it's very, very reminiscent of life, and I really love this book. Again, this was a book that you really only got the female point of view, but I felt like I knew Clark so well, and I just loved how Clark and Andy both went on separate journeys. This is another book that really dealt with a lot of friendship dynamics, which I also really enjoyed, but it also showed how the friendship dynamics affected the friendship and the couple as well, which I really liked. It basically follows this girl named Andy, who's basically a politician's daughter, and when her father falls from grace, her world is turned upside down. She winds up taking a job as a dog walker and encounters this young man named Clark, who has a couple of secrets, and they wind up starting an unexpected relationship. And I really love this book. It remains one of my top Morgan Matson books. I think this one and Since You've Been Gone are tied, but I really, really love this book especially. I just love the dynamics. I love the relationship. I love the structure of it. And I just think Clark is a real cinnamon roll type character. It has some fandom elements, and it was just such a good read. Definitely falls on the fluffier side, but it does deal with a lot of friendship dynamics, which I really liked. A small shout out to also Save the Date by Morgan Matson, which came out this past year. I really love that book as well. I wish the romance was a little bit more pronounced in that book. Like, I loved it. I just wish it was a little bit more romantic stuff with that. But other than that, I definitely loved Unexpected Everything, and really am excited to see what she writes next. The next Katie McGarry book I'm going to chat about is Long Way Home. This was book 3, or in the Thunder Road series. I will admit this series was not my favorite, but I really did like book 2 and 3 in this series. And it just follows Chevy and Violet. And again, there are a couple that has a redemptive love. They had a lot of drama. They got back together. They had a lot of situations going on. I love stories like that. I just love, like, the boy next door and, going back to your former love. I just love stories like that, kind of like Lil and the Boy Next Door, kind of like the one I'm reading now, Every Last Breath by Katie McGarry. I love stories like that because there's so much history. This book definitely had a lot of like intriguing twists and turns with this, and I thought it was simply with the background of being in a motorcycle game, there was an immediate like stress level added to the story. But boy, was it captivating. And I really would like to reread this as well. I still have a few books by Katie McGarry I have not read. It is my goal to finish her because I will be meeting her hopefully in June at BookCon and Book Expo. So I'm super excited for I just love this book so much. I thought it was great. I was definitely my favorite of the series. I loved Violet and Chevy. I love seeing both their point of views, and I think that it was just a really engrossing read. I think I read it in like 2 days. It was super fast paced, and I definitely am due for a reread soon. The next couple I'm going to talk about is definitely a throwback, and that is Liam and Ruby from the Darkest Mind series. This is probably like the second dystopian series that I ever read, but I love this book so much. I thought that Alexandra Bracken crafted such a compelling and fascinating world. Was so upset that the movie didn't do that well because I really wanted to see the whole series. I still have to rewatch the movie actually now that I actually own it. I bought it. But I loved this couple so much. I thought that their dynamics were so interesting, and I love like Ruby and Liam's relationship, especially over the course of 3 novels, because so much happened to these characters. They had so much conflicting drama and things going on, and I just really, really enjoyed reading from it. I only got Ruby's point of view, but I just love the dynamics that her and Liam had. It was definitely an interesting relationship. I wouldn't really clarify it like love to hate, but there were like some elements of that throughout the series that I really liked. And I just loved how their relationship changed so dramatically. Especially seeing them in Darkest Legacy was a really big treat. So I'm curious to see if we'll ever go back to that world and see what happens to them. But overall, I was really impressed with this series and that relationship as well. The last book I'm going to chat about in the series was actually a new find this year, and it's the only graphic novel that made my top 18 books of 2018, and that was The Prince and the Dressmaker. This book honestly surprised me because I picked it up and thought I would like read it once and kind of just forget about it, but oh my god, it was so well done. It just was such a fun read. It's basically about this prince who really likes dressing up in women's clothing, and he hires a dressmaker to help him create these amazing looks. And it starts a really interesting and complicated relationship, but I really loved it. It was so emotional. It was just like it's just like a sweet romance. Like the climax was so emotional, heartbreaking. But other than that, the drawing style is so pretty. I think the lesson it was trying to teach was super helpful. I would love to pass this book on to my kids at school because I think that it would be like a really interesting like read for them. But yeah, it was definitely one of those reads that really like made me cry from happiness and sadness. But overall, I just found the read to be so well done. And I really hope she writes more like in that way, or even writes a sequel, because I would love to see those characters again. But yeah, those are my top 10 couples that I'm currently fangirling over. I'm sure that there are more, but these are my top 10. Let me know in the comments what are some of your top 10 couples, and if I missed them or if you want to share them, I'll be happy to let's have a conversation in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.